What is up, New Beginnings Church? Happy Friday morning to you. Thank God it's Friday, but let us finish strong. We're in this walk through the book of Mark. It's been so good, and we're in Mark chapter 5, and there's kind of two stories that are interwoven together, and I only have time to get to one, and so I'll have to wait until all of next week and Monday morning to pick up the two stories and how they're sandwiched together. But in this is a very famous story, and I'll read it to you. It's starting in verse number kind of 24 here. It says that a large crowd followed Jesus and pressed around him. But there was a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors, and said she had spent all that she had, and yet instead of getting better, she just grew worse. And when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, if I can just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. Well, at once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched me? Who touched my clothes?" "You see the people crowding against you," the disciples answered, "and yet you asked, 'Who touched me?'" Like there's a mob around you, like everybody's touching you. What are you talking about? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. And he said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." This is just one of those powerful stories. I think if you've been in church for any length of time, there's a good chance you've heard this story. The woman with the issue of blood is kind of what she's referred to as. She doesn't have a name. All we know is that she'd been suffering for 12 years and then had gone broke trying to get doctors and people to heal and to help, and she just got worse. And her last hope is Jesus. There's some really cool kind of unique things going on here, where when it says that she would touch the hem of his garment or touch his clothes, depending on what translation, it's interesting because it refers to the tassels that a rabbi would have wore with his prayer shawl and then the tassels at the end. And so she was trying to touch the tassels. And in the Old Testament, there's actually a prophecy about Messiah that said that he would rise with healing in his wings. And the word wings in Hebrew is actually the same identical word as tassels. And so there's this really unique play on the fact that the Messiah would have healing even in his tassels. There's just some really cool stuff there. And so, but for you and I want us to see just a kind of a few elements here is that, number one is that Jesus seems to be headed somewhere. Jesus seems to be surrounded by so much people and people trying to get to him and whatever it is, that this woman had unbelievable determination. And I wrote this down: desperation drives determination. Desperation drives determination. If you don't believe me, go for a while without eating and bless God. We normally don't say, I just haven't found the time to eat. Normally like hunger kicks in, we get desperate. We're like, I need food, and we'll do whatever it takes to go eat some food. You'll even eat some of those weird crusty things that are rolling over and over at the 7-Eleven if you get hungry enough, right? And so desperation drives determination. Well, if you've been suffering for 12 years, you've exhausted all of your funds trying to get better, and you've got massive desperation. And so channel that desperation, though, and this is what she does. She takes her desperation and she channels it into her faith. She believes that if I can just get to Jesus, that Jesus can heal me. And of course, what's so cool is, of course, Jesus recognizes this. It says that virtue went out of him. He realized that a lot of people are trying to grab, but one person was trying to access him. One person actually had a legitimate need, a legitimate desperation, and had that type of access to that virtue and that power. And of course, in that moment that she says that she's healed. And Jesus doesn't say, "Hey, you're welcome, I healed you." Obviously, the healing flowed from Jesus, but he says, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." Now, I'm actually thinking about doing a sermon series coming up later this year where I talk about this idea that if you actually read the gospel stories, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and go look at every miracle where Jesus does a miracle, what you'll notice is It is somebody that is activating and participating in the miracle. Meaning Jesus doesn't just show up and say, hey guys, I'm going to do a big miracle today. Here it is. Actually, it's somebody like this who is accessing Jesus and is doing something to participate and even set in motion, a cause and effect, if you will. Meaning that the power comes from Jesus, but the causality comes from you, your activity, and your faith. And so I want to encourage you today, if you are finding yourself in need of that touch, in need of that miracle, if you find yourself a little bit desperate today, I want to encourage you, make sure that you are seeking Jesus and turning that desperation into faith, and let that faith help you be in full pursuit of having God touch your life. Can I get an amen? Church, I love you guys so much. God bless you, and I will see you this weekend.